This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Okay,
yeah, we're good.
perfect.
You can
Perfect.
introduce yourself and then we can go ahead with the conversation.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Jacey Keller, and I'm a grief and life coach. And the reason why, I guess my why behind that is I lost my mom to colon cancer when I was 17. And I work specifically with people who have lost a parent, and more specifically their mom, because that was my experience. I also help people with like strained relationships with parents, because that was also my experience. I have a father who I haven't seen in 10 years now. And I also have a stepdad who raised me, and he remarried after my mom passed away, to a woman who had 6 kids of her own. And I was the oldest of 5 kids, with my mom and my stepdad. And so after my step parents got married, that made me the oldest of 11 kids. And just 2 years ago, they had a surprise baby together. And so I really like to just focus on like the different dynamics that come from being in a blended family and having lost a parent, and just the strained relationships that people can have with either their father or their mother. So yeah, that's kind of what led me here.
There's a lot going on there, man, because I feel like, losing a parent, regardless of whatever age it is, I think losing a parent is something that's really you cannot put into perspective until you've been there. I think we spoke last time we talked, and I told you I had also lost my mom. And so, that's just, man, what, like, it's kind of hard to explain like that experience to somebody. And then you talked about the estranged relationships. I think that's something that happens like a lot more than people are even aware of, really, because I think a lot of times when you're in that space, you think that certain things are normal or certain things are, this is just how everybody's family is, until you meet a person who has maybe a sort of a healthier relationship with their parent or whatever it is. And so I don't know, it's a matter of perspective, man. These things are it seems like it's all over the place. But so what do you, when you help these people with I guess with the grief, well, I guess we'll start there. When you help people with the grief, like what, I mean, I know you said you work a lot with people who specifically lost their mom, but is it always that? Or, I mean, is it like, I guess maybe what I'm trying to ask is, what is the common scenario that these people are in? Is it like tragic? Is it like sudden? Is it like a mix? Or is it like, kind of a thing they kind of saw coming, whether it was an illness or whatever? I mean, or is it just kind of all over the place?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely all over the place. I mean, I've worked with people who they lost their husband, like it wasn't even their parent, um and they still, have that grief that they're trying to work through. And a lot of times people just feel stuck in it, like they don't know what to do with the grief, like they feel like trapped inside of, I don't know, like this box with all these heavy emotions, and they're like, I don't know what any of this is. It's such a disorienting experience, as as you well know. Um, and it totally, it just changes you. And so not only are people like grieving the loss of their parent or whoever their loved one is, right? But like they're grieving the loss of the life that they had before and the person that they were before. They're grieving their identity, because they don't even know who they are. And they don't, yeah, a lot of times I just hear like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my next steps are. I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I like anymore. And so there's a lot going on. Like, it's not just the grief from losing your parent or whoever it is. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Because I remember when my mom died, it was like the best way I knew how to explain it to people, and this might sound cliche, I don't know, but it's like I felt like I was picked up out of the life that I had, that she was here, and I was placed into a life that she was no longer here. I wouldn't say I had you know, an identity question or anything like that. It was just literally a different life. You know,
Yeah.
it was a different experience.
Mhm.
But the reason I was asking the other question, and I think just because of the nature of the conversation, like what we're saying here is probably likely that I might say something that offends somebody, but I'm definitely not trying to do that. But what I'm asking is, like when my mom died, it was sudden. And
Mhm.
one thing I remember from that time is like, man, if this was something like, because it was sudden, I just immediately I was thinking about all the things she wouldn't be able to see or experience, or like, what she would miss out on from that point, because she died when I was 25, and so I'm 30 now. And I was thinking, like, man, if I just had if I had some sort of time to plan for this, like if I knew this day was coming or whatever, like what would
Right.
I have done differently? Like, maybe would I have spent more time with her, or whatever those things are. And I'm sure those are kind of common questions. But, and I'm not trying to minimize somebody who is in a position where they kind of do see this coming,
Right.
whether it's an illness or something like that. But
Mhm.
I'm just curious, I would imagine that's a common thing for people, is it's almost like a sense of, it's almost like a regret, man, that you didn't, spend enough time or whatever. So it's not just the sadness and the loss of losing this person. It's also, for me, there was a lot of internalizing it, like, oh man, maybe I should have, called her more or whatever. And
Right.
I would imagine that's a common thing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it totally is. There's a lot of regret, and that's something that I hear about too, is like they people wish that they would have called their mom more or spent more time with her. Um, and even people who had a sick mom and the mom passed away, and they still have those regrets. They still, and I think that's just part of grief. I think our brains our brains are wired to like look for problems to help us survive, right? And so I think
Hmm.
that's maybe one of the ways it does that, is like it looks for all of the different like perceived problems or
Right.
regrets and tries to like make sense of it, or tries to like fill in, I don't know, like those gaps, or trying to um I don't know, just like it's almost like it's trying to make you feel better, but it's making you
Hmm.
feel worse, right? Because
Right.
regret doesn't, you know, I don't know if that totally makes sense, but that's just kind of my thought process in real time. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I already have like I feel like I look at things in a problem solving way. So I was already kind of,
Mhm.
anytime there's something like that happens, I'm like, okay, what can I do to make this better? And there's nothing really you can do that makes that better. Um, but I just already had that sort of mindset about it, just that problem solving thing. And I don't know. Uh,
Mhm.
but I know one thing that did help me was, being grateful for the time that I did have, because I had a good relationship with my mom,
Mhm.
and so
Yeah.
I was, and so, uh, but so when these people, because I think we talked about this on our introduction call, people handle grief in very different ways.
Mhm.
Like I have three siblings that shared the same mom, and I feel like we all kind of handled it in different ways. So
Mhm. Yeah.
what I don't even know if there's, I mean, I don't even know if there is a such thing as a healthy way to handle grief, but like, do you help people with that? Like kind of coping with this in a healthy way?
Mhm.
Or do you even
Yeah.
see, I mean, I'm sure you see unhealthy ways, I'm sure that's why people come to you probably.
Yeah. 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 I do believe that there is a healthy versus unhealthy way to cope with grief. I don't think that either one is right or wrong. if that makes sense. Like I do think there is healthy versus unhealthy. However, I think that there's no right or wrong way. Does that make sense? Like
Yep.
there is a difference. And I do help people with that. My experience was I didn't know where to even find resources. It's been 10 years for me. And I just felt so lost. I was like, I don't even know what to do with myself. And so I just like tried to push aside all of the emotions, and I tried to just kind of like keep going. And at the time I was a senior in high school. And so I was kind of like wrapping up my senior year, because she passed away on Valentine's Day. And so I still had a few months left of school, and I was just trying to like keep myself busy. And I was still going to school, up until, I was at school the day that she died. She was in hospice for a week, and we knew that her time was coming. A month prior, the doctor came in and told us in the hospital, he was like, yeah, your mom has about 6 months left. And so we were kind of anticipating that and somewhat planning for it. And so that week that she was in hospice, I was still going to school every day. I was helping with some of the funeral plans. And so I think one way that I tried to cope with it was just by keeping myself busy and trying to distract myself. And I think there is a time and a place for that, especially in those early days of grief where it's like you're just trying to survive. And I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to distract yourself for a minute. I think it does become a problem when you're probably a little bit farther into this grief journey and you are trying to, like, you're more aware of it, but you're still trying to resist the grief that keeps coming up. And I think that's when it becomes a problem. At least that's when it became a problem for me. I just started to eat a lot of food, and like I would eat like whole size pizzas by myself. And I was like, well, I graduated and then I went off to college. And at college is when I like started going through that cycle. And I was like, I'm poor, I'm a college student, I can't sleep, I'm extremely lonely. So I'm just going to eat as much as I can because that's something that I have control over. And it made the grief come back even stronger later on. So yeah, I mean, what was your experience? I'm curious to hear how you coped with it.
Yeah. So first of all, I've talked to several people about overcoming some sort of, adversity or whatever it is. And I think it's easy for a lot of us. We just assume something like drugs or alcohol, or we just assume something like isolation or something like that. But I've heard a couple people say food, and that's one, like, it's hard for me to imagine an unhealthy relationship with food because it is like one of the main necessities that we need, to survive. And so, I just cannot imagine, what that's like going through that. But for me, like I said, for me, it was more like a problem solving thing. Like, what can I do to make this better? Well, clearly there's nothing I can do to make this better. I can't bring her back. I can't change the reality of what the situation is. So what I tried to do and what I hope I was doing was, being there for my family, being some sort of solid foundation for my family. And that doesn't mean I didn't allow myself to grieve. I definitely did. But that was sort of the immediate thing that I could do, that I felt like I could do in the moment. After that, she died in June, and I think September, I was in real estate school getting a real estate license because I felt like I had to do something productive. Like I could not just sit there with this energy. And I already had a business at the time. but I had to do, I couldn't, I had to put that energy into something. And so, and that's what I'm saying. For me, it's more like, I mean, I guess from the outside looking in, maybe you could say I was kind of distracting myself, but I wasn't, because, you know, for those, man, probably the first 6 months after that, it was like it's, I don't know what this is called, but it's like, you get these random thoughts, like these random emotions come to you, and it's just like a wave of like grief that comes over, and it's like, damn, man, I like, you feel like the same that you did like when it immediately happened, you know what I'm saying? And then I still get those every once in a while, man, thinking about things. But no, I just you know, went into problem solving mode, like, what can I do to fix this? Or okay, well, I can't fix this, so what can I do to fix me? You know, what can I do to help me handle this better? And at the time, and I mean, and like I said, this is similar situations too. I was just in a situation a couple months ago with my business where, long story short, we we do a lot of commercial stuff. So we lost a big client for no other reason other than they had new leadership come in and they wanted to make a change. And I never even met the leadership, whatever. And the people that hired us originally actually were surprised. They couldn't believe that we were being fired, basically. But even when that happened, I went into problem solving mode, and I went to, you know, knocking on doors and this kind of thing. And so that's just, I don't know, that's just kind of how I handled it. But it's like, have you ever read the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
Yes.
Yeah. So he talks about this. There's a lot of other people. Tony Robbins has talked about this. You know, if you can't change what's happening around you, change what's happening inside of you. And this is why I'm asking about like these healthy ways or these unhealthy ways. Let me see. I think when she died, I hadn't started the gym yet. I think cause she died 2018. I didn't start working out until like 2020, because it was the first year of COVID, because all the gyms were closed.
Right.
So, but you know, had I been doing that, then that probably would have really accelerated the fitness journey for me. But it's, you know, it's like I'm saying, man, I just had to have something to pour that energy into, other than just kind of, I guess maybe just sitting there with it or whatever. And, you know, I've talked a lot about emotions on this podcast too, man. I think a lot of people are, I don't want to say afraid of emotions, but they're definitely, I think a lot of people, especially men, are reluctant to feel the emotions that they have, when really the emotions you have can be one of the best motivators, the best driving factors for, you know, your growth in your life, whether it's personal growth or career growth or whatever. I can't tell you how many times a negative emotion like, you know, stress or anger or something like that, I've really used that to kind of, you know, push forward and get to whatever the thing is. But I think, what's your take on that though, emotions? Because I feel like that's such, first of all, the way people handle emotions is such a, I mean, it's already a spectrum. Like, people are all over the place with how they handle emotions, but some people internalize these things. Some people, like me, I guess, they feel it and they put it into another thing outside of them, hopefully a productive thing. But I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Like, people handling these emotions, and not necessarily just about grief, maybe just about, I think you even said that when we talked originally, that you help people with breakups and that kind of thing. I mean, I think what you're doing, you see people's emotions really kind of in like, probably, I would say the losing a parent or a loved one or whatever is definitely one of the most painful things that most people ever go through in their life. And so you see this side of emotions with people, which is very different from, like, you know, losing a job, or, you know, even something simpler like somebody cutting you off in traffic. I mean, these are a range of emotions, and you kind of see like the worst side of it, I feel like. So what are your thoughts on that? Like these emotions, kind of handling the emotions, not letting the emotions handle you.
Right. Yeah. I think people are, I don't know if they're necessarily afraid of the emotions. I think they're afraid of getting stuck in the emotion. Like, if they feel it, then they're going to get stuck in it. And at least that's my take on it. And one emotion that's been coming up with a lot of my clients actually is guilt. Like, they feel this guilt, and and they're like, I just don't want to feel this way. I am so scared to feel it. And when in all reality, like there's nothing wrong with guilt. And I guess,
and I don't mean to cut you off, but are you talking about the guilt specifically about the loss of the loved one?
in that sense, yes, specifically, in terms of like losing a loved one. Like it kind of just like takes over. But with any emotion, I think that people allow their emotions to control what they're doing. And that is a big thing that comes up a lot, is like they are either trying to run from their emotions or they're simply acting out that emotion. And I think we have to change our relationship with, those emotions that we feel and that come up for us. And I guess my perspective on emotions has shifted a little bit in the last year or so. I used to think of it as like, oh, I need to like sit here and process until I don't feel this emotion anymore. To now I'm like, I can look at this emotion and just like say, okay, I'm feeling this thing and I'm just going to carry it around with me and it's going to be okay. Like I can still act, in accordance to whatever my goals are, whatever I'm wanting to achieve, versus trying to act out that emotion. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I just kind of like witness those feelings. And I tell a lot of people, like my clients, I'm like, okay, if you're feeling this thing, you can pretend like you're sitting on the couch and you are watching this feeling on the screen. Like you're just witnessing it. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out and, I don't know, go out and party because you're trying to like run from the emotion, or it doesn't mean you have to like go and punch a wall because you're feeling angry. It just comes down to simply letting it be there and committing to yourself that you're willing to experience that and still do the thing that you said you would do.
I think this is such an interesting topic for me, man, because I feel like I said before, a lot of men have this issue with emotions about feeling what their emotions are. And there's two sides of the fence to this. Like the people think that if a man explores his emotions and expresses his emotions or whatever, that's a form of weakness. But then on the other hand, a man who cannot control or experience his emotions in a beneficial and healthy way to the people around him is also, I think that's even worse, because a man who cannot control and harness his anger or whatever it is could potentially be a dangerous man. And so if you don't have control, is not really the right word, because you can't really control an emotion, because an emotion just comes to you because it's something that's there is to teach you something, is to show you that either whatever you're doing is not right or whatever you're doing is right, or to push you in another direction. But it's at least you can at least listen to what the emotion is and try to learn whatever the lesson is that it's trying to teach you and go in that direction. And I think that's the whole thing, man, because people, I know you don't use the word afraid, but I think I will use the word afraid and say that people sometimes are, especially men, are afraid of emotions. But it's like an emotion has never really hurt somebody. It's been the action that's followed the emotion. So if you have a negative emotion, okay, that's not really, you can't really blame yourself for that, because it's just kind of something that comes to you. But your reaction after that is 100% your responsibility. And if you can't, if you're the person who just kind of, just shoves away your emotions and just never really bothers it and just kind of puts it on the shelf and hopes that it fixes itself, I mean, there's only so long you can do that till at one point it's going to all boil over, And when it gets to that point, you don't know what to do because you've never processed your emotions. Like if you over time, if you take the emotions in and process it and kind of learn from it and move on from it, you become the person who is capable of handling your emotions and not letting your emotions handle you. But if you push it off, man, and push it off, just like with any problem, you push it off, but the IRS sends you a tax bill and you just put it on the shelf. That thing just doesn't sit there like a piece of paper. I mean,
Right.
you put these
Mm-hmm.
things off, man. They just grow into this big, huge thing that at some point, is too big to handle.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's such an important point, man, because, but also too, the way people handle emotions, everybody handles it differently. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the awareness, I think the awareness is a lot of the problem, is part of the,
Yeah.
well, I should say, solution.
Yeah.
Awareness is
Mm-hmm.
like a big part of the solution.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just to close out on grief, just for a second, let me backtrack. Yeah, everything that you're saying right here, the guilt, the regret. I mean, I feel like I saw these things. If I didn't, I saw other people, and not necessarily just in my mom's situation, but just with other people. Guilt, the regret, the what ifs, the questioning, what could we have done differently, or what didn't we do? What did we do? And it's just like all these things just kind of, just run rampant. It seems like when these things happen, and I think at least for me, from the outside looking in, a person who doesn't work with people in this space, a big part to me was like, these questions are all natural and okay to have. Like, it's okay to think this, it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
feel this way. I mean, this is something that this was a person that you loved and were connected to. If it was a
Yeah.
parent, it's a person that, helped bring you into this world. If it was a husband or
Mm-hmm.
wife, it was a significant part of your life. And so these things are natural and okay to feel this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like with every other thing in life, and I know it sounds like it's so easy on the outside looking in. From every other thing in life, what are you going to do here moving forward? Because I talk to people a lot, man, and it's like, in these situations, I think nobody would blame you for uh letting this consume you and letting this stop whatever it is that you have set for yourself, and letting this kind of hit the brakes on whatever. Like, nobody would blame you for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you also have the power to continue to push through that. And I think that
Yeah.
going back to Man's Search for Meaning, the book, Viktor Frankl, that's one of the things he talks about in there. Is this guy was for people who don't know, this guy was in a concentration camp, and I think he was a psychologist or something like that. And he was talking about how we can't change the situation, but how we have the power to change how we react in the situation, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a hell of a thing to say and think, even when when we're talking about this grief space. But I think at a certain point, man, it's true, because this guy I think he lost his wife. I think he lost a child in the concentration camps. So anyway, so to move on from grief, what if you had to sort of give a general advice or general direction for people in that space, what do you recommend to people? I mean, if they're kind of in that space, and if they're struggling with how to cope with that, or how to, I know there's like a range of answers that we could go with this, but if a person is just struggling with with these things we talked about, the regret, the guilt, the what ifs, the questions, if they don't really know a healthy way to manage their grief, if they don't know, how to move forward, uh, what, I guess maybe what, if any, guidance could you give people like that sort of um, need that path out, I guess, or through?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think that's such a great question. I hear all the time, like, I just feel stuck. I just feel stuck. I'm stuck in grief. I don't know how to get out. And I think, like, to that, I would say there's no such thing as being stuck in grief, because that would also imply that there's a beginning and an end to it, when in all reality, it's just, like you mentioned before, like, it's just waves that wash over you. And I do kind of like to compare it to being on the beach next to the ocean, and you have the waves coming up, and it's like you are, you're walking along the shore, and the waves come up and hit your feet, and some waves are a little bit stronger than others and can take you out. And that's how I like to look at it, and that's how I don't know, how I like to compare it and recommend people look at it. Because then it's like, oh, okay, I'm not actually stuck. And another thing, I guess, piece of advice I'd like to offer is anytime that you find yourself saying, I am angry, I am sad, you are tying your identity to these emotions that you're feeling, and to kind of like separate yourself from anger. For example, you can say like, I feel angry, I feel, whatever it is. And just to kind of like have a little bit of distance. So then you can separate your thoughts from your emotions, and you're like, okay, I'm not stuck in this emotion. I'm not stuck in grief. And that's just one small tangible way to kind of, I don't know, just like relieve some of that pressure that people might feel in grief.
So, Jacey, I want to point out something real quick. This is a very profound. This just blew my mind. You said separate yourself from the emotion. So it's not I am angry or I am sad. I am feeling these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I, dude, that is like that's a mind blowing thing, man, because like how powerful is that when you separate yourself? Because I talk a lot about when people say I have depression. And I think clinical depression is a very small percent of the people who make this claim, because I think that when people feel depressed or when they are clinically depressed, I think those are two different things. I think feeling depressed can be solved by, a lifestyle change, a diet change, socializing, getting outdoors, whatever. But when we say I have depression, that's like me saying I have green eyes. That's something that's part of my identity. That's something that can't be changed.
Yeah.
But when you say I feel depressed, it's like it completely changes it changes the power of the label that you're putting on yourself. And so when you say I am angry, that implies that you are a thing. But if you say I feel anger, that's a completely different thing. And I wanted to make this point because you worded this in a way that I think is easily understood, because this is something that I don't think we think of a lot. We don't think about that we are not the emotions that we feel. We're not the things that we feel. This is something that we do in fact feel these things. We are not these things.
Yeah. That is one thing I like to talk about a lot, like on my social media, is like, you aren't your emotions. Like, they don't define you. The grief that you feel doesn't define you, and it doesn't make you any less. It just is. Like, it's just this thing that exists, and it's okay that it is there. Because I think a lot of times I'm in some like Facebook support groups for people who've lost a parent, and I see it a lot, and people are like, I'll never be the same. I'm never going to be as happy. And they think of themselves as broken. Like, I am broken. And it's like, you're not broken. You feel broken. And rightfully so, right? Like, you feel brokenhearted, and you experience something very tragic and heartbreaking. So it makes sense. However, you aren't broken. You're still a whole human being. Grief is a natural part of the human being experience. It just is. Everyone will experience it. And it doesn't make you less. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. This makes me think of something, man. When I lost my mom, I was, like I said, I had a good relationship. I was fortunate enough to have a good relationship with my mom. And, I have all the good memories and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought a lot when she initially died. I thought a lot, like, man, I lost my mom. Like, this was the one person in my life who was like always there for me. I could always count on, whatever. And it's like, the more I thought about that, I was like, I lost my mom. Like, I lost my mom. But then I started to change how I was seeing it. I was like, dude, I lost my mom. Like, Like, I lost my mom. What else is going to be out here that's going to affect me the way this is? Like, what am I going to feel that's going to make me feel the grief that this has made me? Like, this was a big person in my life, and she's no longer here. And like, I'm still out here doing these things. I'm still out here like trying to pursue things, trying to make things happen. So like, if that's not gonna change the way I see things or change the way I do things, I don't know if there's many things that would, or anything, like, it's like I started changing. And then this is what I'm trying to say about how I use things like the problem solving mode and just kind of using this to push in another direction. I'm like, damn, man, like, this happened to me. This was traumatic to me. And like, I kept pushing through that. Yeah, it sucked. And it still sucks to this day. But it's like, I handled it. I was able to handle that. Like, I was able to get through that. Like, if you would have asked me a year, couple months, 10 years before then, how I would ever react in that situation, down to the detail of how it happened. Cause like I said, she died in a tragic sudden way. I would probably answer you like, man, I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I could make it through that situation. Like, I don't know if I could get through that situation. But then the situation happens. It's the same thing with this business thing. Like, man, this client was, a good 60% of our revenue. Like, what would we do if we lost 60% of our revenue? And if you would have asked me that before it happened, it's like, man, I don't know, dude. Would I have to sell something? Would I have to downsize? Like, what would go on? And it's like, when the thing happened, I pushed through it. I got out there. I knocked on door. I've told this story before on the podcast. This happened. I went out and knocked on doors. And like I said, we do a lot of commercial stuff. So it's not like I did knock on a couple people's houses because I was trying to get to the HOA of the neighborhood. But it's like, I would go to businesses and, apartment complexes and this kind of thing. I probably got 50 business cards. That was a maybe. Can't tell you how many people told me no. I almost got attacked by a dog during this. Because I knocked on somebody's door and I was trying to get to the HOA. And anyway, that's a long story. By the way, if you ever feel like you're going to be attacked by a dog, don't turn your back to them. I found that out. You're supposed to always face them if you feel like a dog is going to attack you. But yeah, man, it's like, so when this thing happened, I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to solve this problem. And it's like, you look back on these things, man, and you're like, damn it, dude. It sucks. It sucked in the moment. It's painful. Like, I still have these things that come up every once in a while, but it's like, you made it through these things. Like, the whatever it is for you, it might not be the loss of a parent. It might not be the loss of a loved one, whatever it is for you. If you are listening to this, if you're watching this, if you're consuming whatever content online that you're consuming, you have made it through 100% of your bad days. Like, all the days that you thought you could not make it through, you are now here, and you can now look back on that and you say, you know what? It sucked in the moment, but that taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about life. And now that I have went through that, I know that the only thing that can stop me or hurt me is myself, basically. And I mean, I know that's a very strong statement for a lot of people to make, but I don't see how that would not, I don't see how that would not help a person get through whatever it is that they're going through, to know that truly, really, set all emotions aside, all the pain aside. The only thing that can stop you or affect you is yourself. I mean, we all have the power to push through this. And I know, man, that it sounds like when you're in this situation, this is the last thing that you want to hear. I understand that. And then, and by the way, since we're talking about hearing things, there's only so many times that you can hear from a person. And I understand they mean well, but there's only so many times you can hear from a person. Let me know if you need anything. It was like, I can't tell you how many times people said that to me at the wake, at the funeral, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, there's one thing that I need right now, and nobody can really give it to me. So I don't really know how to answer that.
Exactly.
But I mean, there's only so many times you can hear that. But you are the only thing that can. Yeah. If you look at life like you're the only thing that can hurt you, then what? I think there's an African proverb. I'm pretty sure it's African proverb. When there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm.
Yep.
I can't sum it up any better than that.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, like, it makes me feel unstoppable, right? Like, you are the only thing that can really hurt you or, stop you. You're the person that, I don't know, like if something bad happens, like you get to decide what you want to do with that and what you want to make it mean. And you can either let it crush you for the rest of your life and you're constantly telling yourself that you're broken and you can't move on from this. Fine, whatever. But, there is another side and you can say this really horrible thing happened and it really sucks. And I get to, do this thing. I get to choose how I move on from this or move forward. I won't say move on because we all know it's not like you move on from it, but like you do move forward. You move forward from that thing. And I like to compare it to like working out. It's like you're lifting weights, right? And you can either use grief as a weight and you lift and you become stronger, or you can just let it sit there and you become weaker because you're not lifting, right? That's a simple way that I like to break it down in my mind because I can like picture it and see it. But it really is a choice. It is. And I wish more people would choose to use it for them rather than against them.
Yep. But to use your analogy though about the gym, the gym only works if when you're in the gym, you're actually moving the weights, you're actually lifting the weights.
Yep.
So the comparison here is, when you're in this situation, everything that we're saying here about using this, I don't want to say using this, but allowing this to push you forward, it only works if you allow yourself to feel the pain from it.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like with everything in life, man. Like, I don't know if you know anything about it, or maybe if you do like the cold plunging, the ice baths and things like that. I do those things about 5 days a week and man, they suck. They never get better. They never get easier.
Yep.
But it's like being in there for that 3 minutes and feeling that the cold water, just like surround every part of your body. It's like getting out of there. When you get in, it's like you don't want to be in, but when you get out, you're like, okay, I'm ready to start the day. Because I do that thing like 30 minutes after I wake up, man. It fucking sucks. Like it is not fun. But it's like getting in there and then getting out. You are overcoming this first battle, and it's like now you're ready to take on the rest of the day because you did this voluntarily. Now you may not be processing this grief voluntarily. Obviously, this thing didn't happen to you. It wasn't your choice. But it's like, what is your choice is how you're going to move on from this. And I've kind of developed the mindset, man, like I'd be damned if I want to sit there and feel something like this pain and not get anything out of it. Whether it's something as small as, being stronger when I come out, whether it's something as using that emotion to push myself forward. Like, I'm not going to sit there for nothing and not be basically compensated for this pain. And I mean, maybe that's, and I understand a lot of people can't look at things that way, but I think it doesn't really matter as long as you can use it in a way that's going to push you and going to kind of get you out of this perpetuating cycle of like self-inflicted pain that you may not need to have after this whole experience, if that makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't drag it with you as something that don't drag it with you in a way that's gonna bring you down even farther, if that makes sense. I don't know how to word exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I recently listened to this book and I'm trying to remember the name of it and I can't. But his name is Steve Leader, I believe. And he's a rabbi. And in his book, he talks all about pain and loss and grief. And one thing that he mentioned in there was, if you're going through hell, at least don't leave empty-handed. And I thought that was so brilliant because it's like, when it comes to grief, like you don't have control over whether you lose someone or not, right? Like your mom dies. You can't fix that. But if you're going to experience that, then don't leave empty-handed. And it's like, take something with you, learn from it, learn something. And I know that can also be triggering for some people, but like, you have to learn something from it. You have to use it for you. And maybe that's a poor way to explain it, but choose how you want to use that, and choose how you, like, whether you're going to go into the gym and actually like lift the weights, or if you're just going to leave it there. And it's like, if you're going to go to the gym, you might as well lift while you're there, right? Like, you might as well get something out of it. So I just thought his book, I really need to find the title of it because it's so good. But yeah, I thought that was brilliant. Like, don't leave empty-handed. And I think that is really important for people to understand. And I think that's how everyone should look at it.
I 100% agree with that. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break really quick. And then when we come back, I want to get into the estranged relationships and the breakups and stuff, because I have a couple of things I want to ask about that before we finish up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll take a real quick break and we'll be right back.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So with the estranged relationship situation, what's going on there, man? Cause I feel like I don't even know where to begin with that. I mean, I guess maybe talk to us a little bit about that. What's going on there? What do you see there? What's kind of your experience with the people you work with? I mean, is it, I don't want to assume. I'll let you talk.
Yeah. So I guess my personal experience is like, I guess I don't know exactly what happened that caused my biological dad and I to not talk for, I think it was like 8 years, and we haven't seen each other in 10 years. And, I held a lot of resentment towards him for a long time during that period. And I was really bitter and angry, and I was just kind of like, who does that? Like, what happened? What even, am I not good enough? And that is a very common thing that I see with the people I work with, is they're like, it's my fault. Like, I did something wrong. I'm to blame. I'm not good enough for them. And then they just feel extremely resentful, and they don't, they just have negative feelings toward that person or that parent that they're, not talking to. And I guess what I have learned is, a couple years ago, I just got this, I don't know, this feeling to like reach out to him. And I just kept putting it off. And I was like, no, like, I'm not going to be the first one to reach out. Like, it has to be him. And then for a while I was like, no, I need an apology. I need him to say sorry. I need, this is ridiculous. And so it was definitely from a place of like anger at first. And then I got coached on it. I had someone like kind of coach me through it and like figure out why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And then it came down to like, I was needing some sort of, I guess, external validation. Like, I needed, for whatever reason, him to say, I'm sorry, I messed up. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, because then that means that I'm giving up my control over my life to someone else. Like, someone else has the power. And when I figured that out, like, I was like kind of processing everything. And I mean, this is like months and years in the making. And then I was like, oh, what if I didn't get an apology? And like, what if I didn't talk to him, like, what would happen? Like, nothing would change. Like, my life is still good, and I would continue living the way that I'm living, and everything would still be fine. And if I did talk to him, what would change? Like, probably still nothing, like I would, the only difference would be like, I'd have a conversation with him and that's it. And so when I really broke it down, I was like, okay, do I like my reasons for wanting to reach out to him? And when I got to the point where I was like, actually, I do like my reasons align with me, and they're not reasons that are needing something from him. Then I reached out. I called him, we had a conversation, and that was it. Like, that's that, and now it's to the point where it's like, we'll text each other on holidays, and it might be like a couple responses here and there, and that's the extent of it. And for now, that's good. Like, that's okay. I'm content with that for now. And so I guess one of the things that I see a lot is people blame themselves for the estranged relationship. And while I do think that you do play a part, it's not necessarily your fault, because they are they have their reasons, right? And like, they have their stuff that they're working through, and that's okay. It is. So I don't really know if that answers your question, but that's kind of like what I see a lot is like the blame, the self-blame.
Yeah. No, I was kind of expecting you actually to say that. I think one thing that I was kind of actually anticipating you to say was, the person, the child of the estranged relationship, feels like, I don't know if you call it resentful or angry, but they feel like the person should do something different than what they're doing. Like, they just feel like, why can't they, this is my mom, this is my dad. Why can't they do this? They're supposed to do this. Why can't they be this way? And so it just seems like there's just self-perpetuating, never-ending cycle of questions. That's just like, why, like these people, the people that I'm thinking about in my head, they actually have children themselves, and they're like, I would never do this to my children. Why can they just not repair this? And it's like, so at one point in my life, man, I was a lifeguard. I went through like the lifeguard training or whatever, the whole thing, CPR and all that good stuff. And one thing, like the first thing they teach you in lifeguard training is, if a person is drowning in the water, do not approach the person. Throw them something, a flotation device or whatever, help them calm down, and then approach the person. Because if you approach the person when they are panicking and drowning, and you approach that person, not only are they going to drown, but you're also going to drown, because the first thing they're going to do is try to get on top of you and stay afloat.
Yeah. And
it's crazy how similar this is to the estranged relationships. And this is not just parents. This goes for everything. This is friends, family, spouse, even friend, like whatever it is, siblings. If the person is choosing to not make an improvement to themselves, if they are deciding to let themselves drown, I'm not saying you let them drown, but I'm saying don't put yourself in a situation where you are also going to drown. And because the reason I'm saying this is because the experiences I have, the things I've seen, the people I've talked to, it's like there is no amount of conversation with this person that is going to fix the situation. Like, with the person who's done whatever to make the relationship the way it is. There's no amount of conversation. There's no amount of effort. Like, you can say what you have to say. Like, this is just how this person is. If you're talking about a person who is, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, like, this is just how they are. If they haven't changed by now, probably not going to. If they do, that has to be a conscious decision on their part.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the child or the other person on the other side of the estranged relationship, I'm not saying there was zero things done to them, but I am saying that if it is a parent, and especially if it's a young child, man, and that parent is not holding up it's like, if it's a young child and the parent is the one who's, not there, not present, not being who they should be, it is 100% their responsibility. It's not the child. I'm talking about once that child becomes an adult, and then and then we're having this conversation. But it's like the person who is not meeting the expectations of the other person, most of the time a parent, if they don't want to fix themselves, dude, they're not going to fix themselves. Like you can't swim out to them and allow both of yourselves to drown because they are either blind or willfully ignorant or so arrogant that they can't see their own flaws and mistakes on how they need to fix the situation. If they're not willing to do that, you almost, and I know it's hard, but you almost have to take a step back and let this person figure things out for themselves. You can love people from a distance. You can be there from a distance, but you cannot put yourself in a situation where their character flaws are also going to bring you down. I mean, you can't do that. Like, especially if these people have children of their own, if they have whatever they have going on, you can't do that. Jacey, are you still there? Make sure we have that. But
okay,
I'm just saying, man, if the person doesn't want to be saved, it's really not your job to save them, and it's definitely not your job to go down with them if they don't if they want to drown. I mean, that's all I'm saying. And I know with me, maybe I see things more black and white than some people. Maybe it's easier for me to see this. I know a lot of people, especially the parent-child relationship, they want that relationship with this person. And it's like, I understand that, but until that person can see where they need to step up on their side of the relationship, you just simply, you can't do it for them. You can't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you can't. And I think a lot of that comes from, like you mentioned before, like we have these expectations for what they should be doing, like what we want them to be doing and what they want us to be doing. And I think that's where it kind of falls apart, is like we don't live within any of those expectations, right? Like if we lived by every expectation that this person set for us, I mean, we would be miserable, right? And so I think it comes down to just being flexible, like release those expectations and just learn, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but just like be okay with being uncomfortable with other people making their own decisions. And that goes for both sides. Like it goes for the, in this case, like the parent, and it goes for the child. Like you have to learn to be okay with them making their decisions. And it is really uncomfortable. I know it's really uncomfortable to, I know, because I got into some arguments with, not even arguments, it was just we didn't agree on some things. And and it was just kind of like, well, you should be doing this. And I was like, well, as a parent, you should be showing up this way. And I think if we had just been okay with being uncomfortable with the other person choosing what they decided, then it would be a lot better and a lot easier. And I think that also kind of ties back into like maybe the fear of being uncomfortable, like the fear of that emotion that comes up, or like the idea of like getting stuck in it. I could be wrong, but that's just what I don't know. That's just kind of what I think.
Jacey, I'm gonna have to finish up here shortly. Let me ask you about relationships, like breakups and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because, and I guess specifically what I want to ask is, I think it's I hope that it's easy for everybody to understand that if a person is not right for them, if they're being mistreated or if they're being, XYZ, any sort of mistreated or cheated on or whatever it is, I hope that a lot of people can understand that they should not be in that situation. They should, remove themselves from the situation. But, I think when just thinking about this, man, I feel like I hope nobody has a problem leaving a relationship just like that. I think what people might have a problem with is leaving a relationship where everything seems to be fine. The person is a good person, but they don't feel like the person is right for them. I think it's easy to leave for a lot of people to leave a relationship that is they're being mistreated or is whatever. But I think it's a different situation when the person is actually a good person. It's just not a good person for them, whether it's the direction they're headed in life, whatever it is. So, what would you say to a person that's kind of in that spot? Because like I said, I think the being mistreated thing, I think that's kind of an obvious one. Although I know that people have issues leaving those kind of relationships too. But if a person just feels like, a person is just not okay for them, but they're actually a good person, and so I don't know, maybe they feel guilty or shame or whatever about the breakup. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial thought is to trust yourself. Like, be so committed to yourself that you're willing to give up something good for something even better. And that is really hard to do, because it's like you don't know what's coming. Like, you don't know what the future looks like. And so it's like, you have these thoughts of like, oh, well, like, what if this is as good as it gets? Like, what if I don't find someone as good as this person, or, things like that. And I think, I honestly think that we have the answers that we need, but we sometimes let external forces get in the way, or we let the doubt get in the way, and we don't trust ourselves enough. And I think it just comes down to like, you have to be able to trust yourself. It really does. So that's my initial reaction.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the self-trust is first of all, I think self-trust is a big key aspect for anybody. Being able to trust yourself. Like we all hear about, if you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. I think the same is true with trust, because if you can't trust your own inner guidance or your own, intuition or whatever, well, if you can't trust yourself, then there's not much anybody can say or do for you that's going to help you anyways, because you don't know your own. This is one thing that I like. This is why I talk so much about kind of keeping commitments with yourself and kind of doing the hard thing and like building self-confidence, because there are going to be times in your life where nobody knows what's best for you the way you do. There's going to be times where you have to lean into your own intuition, lean into your own guidance, and follow, you can say follow your heart, you can say follow your intuition, whatever it is, but there's going to be things that only you know what's best for you. And what I think you and I kind of have experienced some of the same things. There's also going to be moments that you realize that there is, you could have the best parents on the face of the earth, man. You could have the best people in your life, but these people are not always going to be around. And if they are, they might not know what's best for you in these moments the way you do. Right. And if you can't lean on your own understanding, you can't lean on your own judgment, you can't think about, with a conscious, clear head, okay, excuse me, this is what I want to do. This is the thing I want to have. Maybe it doesn't make sense to everybody else, but for me right now, this is the right thing for me to do or pursue or try or whatever it is. Right. And I think that if people will learn to do that a little bit more, they'll actually live a life that's way more fulfilling, because like the things that they'll have for themselves, whether it's career or family or otherwise, will be a lot more just fulfilling and along the lines of what they want. One thing I did want to get your opinion on, I don't think we touched on this yet, and I don't know if this is necessarily an estranged relationship, but I see a lot of people like in their early mid-20s, unfortunately even in their 30s, where they feel like I don't know if they're conscious of this, but I think what's happening is they feel like they're living a life that their parents have sort of laid out for them. And
Mhm.
it's almost like the parents are like vicariously living through them. Like they have to, they want to, their parents want them to do a certain thing to be pleased, to be proud of them or pleased with them or whatever. And it's like the person, I don't want to say they feel trapped because I've never heard that from a person, but it's just like on the outside looking in, these are full grown adults who
Mhm.
really can't pursue their own path in life. They can't do their own thing in life. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's on the other end of the spectrum versus from a estranged relationship. I guess the estranged is not, not enough of a connection. And maybe whatever this relationship is too much of a connection. The parents are feeling like I don't know, whatever it is, they're trying to live vicariously or they're trying to protect them to the point that they can't. I don't know, whatever it is. But I think this is the opposite end of the spectrum from that. Do you
Mhm.
work with people in that situation? That has anybody ever come to you and said, "Hey, look, I just feel like, you know, I'm trapped for my parents' expectations or whatever"?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Oh, yeah. I see that a lot. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience and they might not even realize it. Like they're not totally aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, yeah, there's a lot to it. So on the parent side, it's them they're relying on that child, their adult child, to make them feel a certain way. And so they're actually putting a lot of their power into the child. And they're like, you need to do this so that I feel this way. Instead of just, you know, giving themselves whatever they're needing, right? Like they're relying on external validation to feel confident, right? Or like this false sense of security and confidence. Um, and then on the adult child side, it's a lot of I I think people pleasing. I think there's people pleasing, and I think it's also a lot of responsibility. They think that they have to do certain things to make people feel a certain way, and not only does that show up in that relationship with their parent, but it shows up everywhere, like with work, with friends, with school, all the things. And truly, you end up living a pretty miserable life. Um, I kind of went through a period where I was very much like that, where I was like, oh, I need to show up in a certain way for the certain person so that they feel happy or confident or, whatever it is. And and I think it's also like enabling, like the adult child is enabling that parent to act, act however they're acting. And it does the opposite of build up confidence. Like,
Oh, for sure.
like I said before, like it provides this false sense of security and confidence when really it's just like making them even more insecure. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a pretty not so great relationship,
Right.
in my
I think one.
opinion.
No, I agree. I think one thing that I've seen with that is that these people they it's almost like they feel like they almost feel the adult child almost feels guilty because they want to make their parents proud or their parents
Mhm.
to love them or whatever. And I'm like, bro, if you have to pursue the career they want you to pursue or live in the box they want you to live in for them to be proud
Mhm.
of you or love you, like you've got bigger
Mhm.
problems than this. I don't say that, but
Yeah.
that's just what I think, you know? I mean,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
like I don't have children, but I can only imagine just from everybody that I know that has children, it's like how does a person like how can you be so this sounds very I don't mean this to sound as negative as it does, but how can a person just be so consumed in themselves, like in what they want in their life, that they have to push that onto another person for them to feel
Mhm.
validated in themselves? And I'm talking about the the
Yeah.
the parent in this situation, you know,
Right. Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it, And I know, I understand, man. I know, like, from their perspective, they're doing the right thing. I know that they think they're trying to protect their child. They want what they feel like is the best for their child. They want a good career, whatever. But let's just be honest. Like, I know a lot of people in that situation who it's like the opposite effect. Like the adult child who feel like they are trapped. A lot of times you see when they go to college or move out or whatever, the first time they get a little bit of freedom, man, they just go wild with it. I'm not saying every person, but that happens a lot. Like the first time they get a little bit of that sense of freedom, the adulthood that they've been craving, it's like they don't know how to handle it because they haven't had it in doses. And I'm not here. Look, I'm not the guy to tell a person how to raise their children or what to do with your teenagers or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying that living vicariously through a person and putting your own expectations that you can't meet for yourself onto another person so that you can feel validated with yourself is not something you should do to somebody that you love and care about. I mean, it's just not.
Right.
That's just the way I see it.
Yeah.
Like, and I think what. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think what me and you have talked about today, like overprotecting children or overprotecting people in general, is not good, because these tragedies of life, they happen. They're going to happen whether we want them to happen or not. And if something that I've heard from like several people in these situations is like they feel like they were overprotected. They feel like they didn't really get a dose of what was really out there in the world. And then so when things happen, it's like these people don't know how to respond. And if you don't know how to respond to tragedy, there's several different things that go with that. But a main thing is you can't trust yourself. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't know who you even are. It opens up the door to be manipulated from people because you're not aware that there are a small percentage of people who are out to do this kind of thing. And it's just there's so many different things, man. But that's a whole nother conversation, I feel like, on how to dose the malevolence of the world, I guess, and I would really like to get somebody on here to talk about that. I don't know if I guess that would be like a parenting coach or something. I don't know, but I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think parents, in this case, the parents that are, living vicariously through their child, I think they have this thought pattern going through their mind that is something along the lines of, like, I'm not capable of feeling whatever it is if my child were to do this thing. And they're tying their own identity to the child and their actions. And I just want to say, like, that cannot be further from the truth. Like, you are totally capable of feeling whatever it is. Like, you can feel any emotion despite what your kid does. Like, it truly does not matter. Those emotions that come up, it doesn't matter what anyone else does, right? Like, you're gonna feel them no matter what. And so, and the other part is, like, that parent is already feeling that emotion and they're thinking that they can, like, get rid of it by living through their child or by trying to push these expectations onto their child. And so that's just one point that I thought of as you were talking.
Well, I feel like we could continue to talk. We could probably talk for another hour or two. But I do have to leave here in a couple minutes. Where can you be found on social media, or do you have a website or anything that you want to promote?
I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram at rebuildyourlife.griefcoach. And I'm most active on there. So then I just have my personal Facebook page, but I don't really do a whole lot with that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So one other question, and this is something that I kind of ask everybody. If you had to pinpoint one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, or maybe one of the most important, something you're comfortable sharing, it'd be through your career, your personal experience, if you're comfortable sharing it, just what do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned in life?
That's a really good question. So I think probably one of the most valuable lessons is using my voice, because I, growing up, I was a very shy person. My teachers in elementary school were really concerned. They're like, she doesn't talk. What's wrong with her? And I really struggled with that for a long time. And my mom, when she was in hospice, when I, was saying my goodbye to her and stuff, she told me to like crack that shell. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what is happening? And then, of course, like a few years later, I asked someone and they were like, well, this is what that means. And then 3 years ago, when I started my coaching practice, I started to like talk more about grief and my experience and like really open up about, just these things that aren't totally comfortable to really talk about. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest lessons, is using my voice to hopefully help others, and to also show that like your life does not end when your mom dies. Like, it actually can be really, really good. So yeah, I think that's probably to this day like one of the most important lessons I've learned.
Well, I could definitely say that is an important lesson to learn, because your voice is something that only you have. Whether if it's anything, and I mean this literally and metaphorically, like your voice, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure there are like there's like voice recognition technology that this, like, it recognizes your voice as what your voice is. So your voice is already unique to you. But then the way you can use that voice to help other people, or for whatever, is also something that's only unique to you. And I think I think that's a really important lesson to learn, man, is because nobody can bring your voice to the world the way you can. Whatever it is that we have here to offer to this world, it's only us that can bring it to the world. And I think sometimes the only way we get there is through these things like grief, through these hardships, through these tragedies, through these these breakups, or whatever it is. I mean, these kind of things can really push a person to be in the position to pursue their purpose that they're supposed to do here. And so, so I could definitely see that. And, I wish you the best of luck with what you're doing, because I think that the spot you're in is something that's really difficult. For me, it's always been really difficult to talk to people about grief, simply because I don't know what to say. I'm well aware. I hope I have enough self-awareness to know that the way I talk to people, like especially about grief or something, may come off as too strong. Obviously, if I was talking to a person about grief, I wouldn't say some of the things the way I've said it today. Be a little bit more compassionate. But I mean, the thing you're doing, man, it's really difficult to talk to somebody about grief, I've always found. And it's been difficult to talk to people about breakups, because I'm sure you see this, but when I talk to somebody about a breakup, man, it's like you can tell them whatever you want to tell them, but they are going to think and see things the way they want to see it. Like, all the signs are there with this person, like it's clearly not going to work, and they're still going to think, like, I don't know, man, love is a very blinding emotion, but no, I do appreciate what you're doing out here, and I wish you the best of luck. And I appreciate you coming on and talking with us today and sharing everything that you have.
Thank you.
And and wish you the best out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you found this content or this episode useful and intriguing, you can visit us on social media. This is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. Pure Wisdom Podcast on all social medias. You can interact with us, follow, like, and share there, and we will see you guys next time.